Okay. So uranium was one of the bright spots. It is well understood that you are a big fan of geothermal energy too.
I am.
One of the geothermal companies, there are not so many, is Power, where you have big influence at least, and you're a big shareholder.
I am.
Unfortunately for investors, right now these kind of companies are really out of favor, so they're not moving in the right direction. At least if you are invested and would like to see a higher price. What's your opinion on that?
These are deeply out of favor, and they're deeply out of favor for a couple of reasons. The front-end investment in geothermal energy is huge, and the payoff comes over a long period of time. Resource investors don't know enough about geothermal, and they were unprepared for the very high front-end capital costs. A second part of the fact that many investors don't understand the geothermal business is the way that geothermal companies report news isn't familiar to the resource investor. Where a German investor or an American investor might understand hundreds of barrels per day or millions of cubic feet of gas or grams per ton, they don't understand gigawatts, kilowatts, pounds of steam, or calories, heat temperature. What is going to be interesting, and I think bullish in the geothermal business in the next sort of 12 months, will be two things. The news flow coming out of the geothermal companies will begin to increase. They're fairly well funded. They're drilling, they're moving into pre-feasibility or feasibility stage. Several of the companies, Nevada Geopower, US Geopower, Magma, and now RAM, are moving into production. So they're going to go cash flow positive. And you'll be able to see the way that a company proceeds in an economic sense from construction to cash flow to project pipeline. The fact that they're able to complete a project, get permanent financing, get that project cash flow positive, will validate the value of the pipelines in these companies. The second thing that's going to happen is that because it's such a capital intensive business, scale is required, and you're going to see the industry consolidate. Even though there's only 4 players in the geothermal space now that matter, not 4 players really, but 4 that matter in the small sector, you're going to see further consolidation. You're going to see these things merge. The third factor that'll take place, and I'm talking about North American geothermal now rather than global geothermal. The fourth factor in North American geothermal is that for many of the big utility companies and the independent power producers on a worldwide basis, while the retail investor isn't familiar with green energy and geothermal, the big power producers are. And you're starting to see companies like Enbridge, which a couple weeks ago did a deal with US Geothermal, Suez in Europe, E.ON, Enel, Duke Power, Southern Company, AES. You're starting to see all of these great big global power entities starting to circle the geothermal business. I would suspect that the first time a geothermal junior gets taken over by a major, it'll be a game changer. You may recall that the event that really sparked the retail investor interest in uranium was the move in Paladin from 5 cents a share to $2 a share. The story had been very true before then. It had been, at least by myself, told at 50 investment conferences over 4 years. I was not very shy about promoting it. People thought it was an interesting story. They would concede that it was a true story, but it wasn't validated until somebody made money on Paladin. When somebody makes money on geothermal, the fact that the story is valid and true will suddenly make it interesting.
So there would be a lot of room for share prices of these geothermal companies to increase.
There will. My fear, and it's funny to call it a fear, my fear is that they'll be taken over by the big power companies before they have a chance to mature. The latent values, particularly in RAM and Magma, the values of the pipelines are extraordinary. These companies got in and they got control of prime Western Hemisphere assets before the big power companies figured out the game. My fear is that the big power companies figure out the value inherent in these geothermal producers before the market does. So that while we'll get higher share prices in a takeover, we won't get anything like the prices we'd get if we were able to build these companies for 3 to 5 more years.
Okay, so let's hope that maybe there is enough time to build these companies to much bigger entities before some kind of takeover target.
That would be my hope. You know, in the 4 remaining North American juniors that matter, Magma, RAM, Nevada Geopower, and US Geopower, they all have very, very, very deep project pipelines. They don't have enough capital at present to build out the pipelines. They're wisely using their capital to build one project at a time. But the project pipelines that they have relative to the project pipelines that, say, a junior oil and gas company or a junior mining company would have are staggering. And the present value of those megawatts where they built out relative to the market caps are really astonishing.
In the case of Ram Power, where you're a big shareholder, there is nothing possible regarding a takeover if shareholders like you are satisfied with the price. So what do you think they have to, if there's some kind of takeover would occur, what do you think what's possible?
I've been publicly quoted as saying that RAM's model justifies a $15 share price in 5 years. On a net present value basis, what is that worth today? $5.50, $6?
Yeah, something like that.
While I am a large shareholder, and while it's a very large position for me relative to the rest of my portfolio, I'm still less than a 15% shareholder. If a couple of British investors and a couple of European banks decided that they wanted to sell RAM, it would be sold. It would be sold, particularly because the British investors are clients of mine, and I wouldn't act in interests that were contrary to theirs.
But at least there should be room for more than 100% at least. So let's hope that this will all occur, and I'm very optimistic for the geothermal too, and for uranium, much more than on gold. So we're on the same side. Okay, thanks Rick.
Pleasure.
For this interview.
Pleasure.
Have a nice time.